Hello, I'm Matthew Buzzy from PC Mag, and I'm here with Tom Brandt. And we have two exciting recent releases for you. Apple's refreshed MacBook Pro line, big reviews, big releases. We have the full reviews already on PCMag.com, so those details and our full impressions are already out there. But to see the product, to get our sort of spoken impressions, I have Tom Brandt here who reviewed both of these laptops. We have the 14-inch MacBook Pro and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Different configurations on each, so we kind of got to see what Apple's new M1 chips were about, both the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. And there's different, obviously, design elements to the 14-inch versus the 16-inch, so there's really a lot to talk about. But based on Tom's reviews, it's all very positive. Tom, which one are you holding there in your hands?
So this is the 14-inch MacBook Pro. It's a brand new screen size for Apple. And obviously, straight away, you can see that there's a very controversial addition to this laptop, which is the notch there in the screen. They've basically done, it's a tried and true recipe of shrinking down the laptop, but keeping the screen, as big as possible. Some manufacturers, not just Apple, have put a notch in the screen for the camera. That's what Apple has done here. So that's what you see on this 14-inch MacBook Pro. And then the other more positive elements to the new laptop are the port situation, which if you've been eyeing a MacBook Pro in the past, you probably, and you have an SD card full of photos and video to plug in, you've probably been putting that off. We do now have an SD card on the MacBook Pro for the first time in probably 5 years. So those new port options and that screen notch are probably the two most visually arresting things about this new design. Other than that, it's a Mac.
It's a MacBook Pro. You know what you're getting. Yeah, has that notch gotten in your way? Like just quick impressions. Like, do you notice it after a while? Is it in the way when apps are in full screen?
So here's the thing with the notch. It holds a really, really, really good laptop webcam. This is a 1080p resolution sensor. It's got all of the Apple Silicon image signal processing enhancements. It will make you look really good. Is that enough to justify the notch? Mm-hmm. So there are two things that you can do if you hate the notch. One is, there's only one thing you can do if you hate the notch, which is you don't use a bright screen background. Mm-hmm. Simply switch to dark mode, which is in vogue now anyway. And so that's what I've done on the 16-inch MacBook Pro here to show you the difference. So this is the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which also has a notch. Don't mistake that. There is.
But where is it?
But you really can't see it because I've switched to this nice dark mode display. So that's a consolation prize. The other consolation prize is that on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which, by the way, the previous 16-inch MacBook Pro, which definitely existed, did not have a notch. They've actually bumped up the screen size to 16.2 inches. Mm-hmm. So that fraction of an inch is not that big in terms of additional space, but there are a ton of additional pixels in the screen, which kind of makes up for that. So if you're looking for the 16-inch model, that notch can somewhat be tempered a bit.
Right. It's diminished. Its impact is diminished. Overall, not a huge deal. I think it is odd, maybe in full screen where you can't hide it with the taskbar, you might see it. I know that caught a lot of attention because it's, as you said, one of the really two most visible, observable changes. So that's obviously going to attract a lot of attention. But the core and foundational elements, both in terms of features and specs, are really what make this laptop, both of these laptops, sort of pop. And in addition to the ports, great battery life still to go with that great camera, and good build quality, good keyboard, all the things we like about the MacBook.
Yeah, so basically the keyboard, battery life, and the giant touchpad are unchanged with this version. They've been excellent for the past few versions. Battery life especially has been surprisingly good on MacBooks compared, especially the more powerful ones compared with their Windows competitors. We're talking like more than 20 hours of battery life for the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is consistent with previous. It's not, head and shoulders above previous Macs, but like when you compare this to a Windows workstation where you're looking at similar power, you're probably looking at, 4 to 5 hours of battery life versus 20 hours. As you mentioned, the keyboard is also very similar. The one difference to the keyboard is that you see there's no touch bar. Apple doesn't really want you to interact with
goodbye touch bar
with touching. So they put the touch bar on there, I think, as a way of appeasing people who are like, well, there are some things that you need to touch, like scrubbing through a timeline.
Yeah.
Now they've just said, okay, fine, we'll do away with that. There's no touching at all, and I think that most people probably won't miss that.
Yeah, it never really caught on. People kind of, justified its existence, but in reality, I think people prefer just the physical function row. There's a couple things like that on this update that have gone sort of back to what people prefer. No touch bar, the MagSafe connector, the SD card slot. So a lot of good kind of traditional elements in this new.
So
MacBook.
And you mentioned the MagSafe. I'm gonna briefly reach down and pick up the power cable here on the floor.
Go off that good MagSafe action
and plug that in. And yeah, you can see that. Well, it's
so easy, it comes right out.
But that's the beauty of MagSafe, is that it falls out. It doesn't pull the laptop
without
down
pulling your laptop off the shelf. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Just a note about that though. Don't plan on using your MagSafe adapter from your 2015 MacBook Pro. It's a different size. If
you still have that sitting around, that's you. Throw it out. So great display, notch aside or notch included, depending on which bothers you. Great webcam, good keyboard, all the sort of design elements. But the real new thing that is not so observable, the real big exciting addition, and what Apple spent a lot of time on in its press conference, and what you spent a lot of time on reviewing in your review, is the performance of these new chips. Apple introduced its own sort of homebrewed M1 chips, moving away from Intel with the last update of MacBooks with the MacBook Air. And now these sort of souped up versions, the MacBook M1 Pro and the MacBook M1 Max are now available. So we have both of those flavors in both of these screen sizes. The Pro we had in the 14-inch MacBook, and the Max we have in the 16-inch MacBook. So Tom has both of those. We got to test both different new chip in each size. So we have a bunch of sort of variations here for you. But we did find that the Pro ended up being our favorite, even though it was in the smaller 14-inch laptop. We think that's sort of the best bang for your buck. What did you see in your testing, and did it blow you away as much as Apple made it sound like it would?
So the M1 Pro is really an excellent processor, which it combines both the CPU and the GPU for I would say, like, an entry-level workstation type situation where you are compiling massive amounts of code, or you are rendering a lot of high-resolution video, editing huge data sets, working with truly processor-intensive workflows that go beyond pretty much anything that your average computer user can think of. So, like, we're not talking about browsing with lots of tabs open. That's going to be fine even on the MacBook Air.
Right. Both the existing older Intel processors were capable of that, as is the M1 MacBook Air, which is a great chip. But
so here's the thing, though. If you're deciding between the M1 Pro and the M1 Max, you can get both screen sizes with both chips, so that shouldn't be as much of a factor. The main thing is both of them have upgraded configurations. You can either choose an 8-core M1 Pro or a 10-core M1 Pro. And in the M1 Max, you can take the GPU cores up to 32. That's 32 graphics cores in a single chip. And also it has a Apple ProRes encoder and decoder. So if those mean anything to you, then you should choose the M1 Max. But in practice, when you look at the performance numbers that we came up with in our testing, on most tasks, there isn't a lot of difference. It's only if you were rendering 7 streams of 8K video that you should opt for that those 32 graphic cores in the M1 Max. And in that case, you might actually see a slight benefit from the larger machine, because it does have the performance mode, which can maximize cooling. But ultimately, the differences are going to be very small. And unless you need those additional graphics cores and the ProRes encoder decoder, which, by the way, not even the Mac Pro has has the encoder and decoder for ProRes, then the M1 Max might be an option. Otherwise, stick with the M1 Pro.
Yeah, the Pro really means Pro, perhaps now more than ever in the MacBook Pro name. These are both expensive and powerful laptops, as you described, for high-end workloads, not for everyday tasks. So just because these are the newest chips, don't necessarily assume you need to run out and get them. This is all in detail in Tom's written reviews, but this is definitely for the creator class, the engineers, people who really are putting a lot of workload on their computer and need that many cores.
Now, if you are a creative class type person who wants to buy a MacBook Pro, you might also be wondering, is this any good at gaming? Macs typically aren't gaming laptops. This and the 14-inch one, neither of these really are marketed as gaming laptops either. But wait, I mean, they have 32 GPU cores. Shouldn't this be any good? We actually did test a ton of games, and we'll have a more detailed gaming analysis of the new MacBook Pro. But you know, the spoiler there is, yes, it's a good GPU. It will run games on the equivalent to an NVIDIA RTX card, but you know, the breadth of games out there that run on Mac OS is still, you know, that doesn't affect that you really can't find a lot of games.
It's an improvement, but it's as much or more of an ecosystem problem than it has ever been. The possibility that Apple can put enough hardware juice in a laptop.
Yeah, and people have gotten around that in the past by they'll encode their ProRes video all day long, and then they'll switch over to Windows to play some games. That this is a more complicated situation now because even if you do switch over to Windows on the M1 Mac, it's going to be the Windows performance is going to suffer because it's running on ARM instead of Intel. So yeah, gaming is still not
what it's for. As you said, the gaming test really showed that it has good raw graphics horsepower, but as a gaming experience, probably still not where you go. But you can do some on the side.
So what if you want to watch a video though? Let's say you want to watch a video or watch the video that you created. This now has a mini LED screen, which is a first for a MacBook Pro. It uses, you can kind of see here in this background, it uses different local dimming zones on the screen, which we've seen in a few high-end creator class external monitors, but it means that the white is really, really, really bright, and the contrast is really excellent. It's on par with an OLED screen, and again, this is something that both laptops have. Both screen sizes have. They come standard, to take advantage of that. We're talking up to like 1600 nits of maximum brightness, which is absolutely insane. Yeah. It broke our measuring device. Our device cannot measure that high for this technology. So that's another benefit there.
Yeah, there's a lot of goodies like that. Again, more packed into the full reviews than we will get into here, but a lot of extras like that make it sort of worthwhile for those people and make sort of the high price tag worthwhile. I know the 14-inch starts at $2,000 and the 16-inch starts at $2,500. We tested even more expensive configurations than that. We got pretty souped up versions, but the price tag should tell you alone what we just told you about the specs. It's not for the average user, right? $2,000 starting price is not like your everyday daily driver for browsing the web. So it all kind of makes sense as a package as long as you know that's who it's for. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on? One cool feature or thing we did not get to?
Yes, there is an HDMI port. Connect your 14-inch Mac. If you go for the smaller MacBook Pro, connect your 14-inch MacBook Pro to your external monitor with no dongle required. Let's see. Well, yeah, we'll show that off again as the one final cool thing. When you go home and plug into your external monitor there, you've got the HDMI right where it should be.
And are we dealing with USB-C only, or do we have any full-size ports for the full-size port users out there?
Well, no, so there is only USB-C other than the SD card and the HDMI connector. It's USB-C only, and actually it's one slight step back from the previous 16-inch model, which had 4 USB ports, USB-C ports. This one, and both of them have the same port selection. They're down to 3, but as a consolation prize, you do get Thunderbolt 4, which the old model didn't have. So you can connect, between the HDMI and 3 of those USB-C ports, you can connect a ton of external displays.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure about USB-A because people always ask, but I do think it's probably fair to say, along with the price and the design and the specs, that true creators are on USB-C at this point.
Yep, The rectangle ship has
Yeah.
sailed or sunk, depending
Yep.
on how you look at it.
Particularly for users, likely users of this laptop. All right, well, that is it. Thank you so much. As I said, the full reviews are on PCMag.com. Our favorite of the two, getting a 4.5 out of 5 and an editor's choice, was the 14-inch with the M1 Pro. So that was Tom's favorite of the two, but the 16-inch with the Max still also got a good score. Definitely a mouthful with the M1 Mac and the M1 Mac Pro. There's a lot going on there, but we have it all straight for you. Thank you so much for watching, and please check out the full reviews on PCMag.com.